give everybody about another minute, and then I guess we're going to launch ahead. It's time to get going. All right, so it's Friday morning, session 1. Hopefully you guys have seen some of these slides before, but welcome to WISH. Here's the know well. Again, hopefully you've seen this. The basic gist is if you know anything about IPR, you should declare it. If you're going to participate, please make sure to follow the professional guidelines that we set forth here, any harassment, code of conduct, etc. If you have any questions about these, you can contact the chairs or others. This is WISH. It's Niels and myself as chairs. But I guess that's one of the things you should notice is that Niels is the new chair. And with the passing of Dr. Alex, I'd like to just take a minute here to kind of remember Dr. Alex. All right, so on to the fun administrivia stuff. We already done through the virtual meeting tips, the note well, the virtual blue sheets are automatic. That's great. We do need a note taker. Would anyone like to volunteer to take notes for us? I'll buy you a beer the next time I see you. Anybody want to be famous?
I can do note taking.
Anybody?
Sophia just volunteered. Thank you.
I'm not sure if Sean is listening. Sorry.
Any chance I can impose? I know some of the names here.
Sean, can you hear us?
Jonathan, can I ask you to take notes for us? I cannot hear you.
Seems like Sean was talking for most part. We can hear him, but he doesn't hear us.
Oh, we have a volunteer. Great. All right. So basically, the rest of it is just going through the draft. So I guess I'll hand this over to Sergio.
I will not.
I can't hear anything.
But the rest of you hear me, right?
Now I can hear. All right, great.
Okay. Okay. I will not turn on my video because I have limited bandwidth and probably it will not work very well. So let's go to the next slide, please. So these are the changes from the first draft that we presented in the past IETF meeting to the latest one that we have now in the as the latest version that the draft the version 2. And since that version, I included, I think that most of the comments that I received on the mailing list from most people, mainly in the first draft, I added support for client-side initiated trickle ice and ice restart, and also an option to do HTTP delete for explicitly terminating a session. And in the draft 2, I added the references to the simulcast negotiation or clarification to the simulcast negotiation, clarification how the two URLs for the endpoint and the resource are about, and make the immediate revocation of consent normative when the server side is rejecting a session. Add the protocol extensibility section that was also requested in the WIS chapter, and added an option that I want to discuss in this meeting about the Tune server configuration, and also just send 4 or 5 responses to Unix method. So if we can go to the next slide, so we can start seeing each of these changes in detail. So basically, what we have changed in the session setup is that now when the HTTP post is done to the web endpoint to start the session, what we return is a URL that it is used for, that it is the URL of the new web resource that has been created, and that it will be used for doing the ICE stuff, and also the HTTP delete methods. And the rest of the protocols is just the same. You do the SDP offer answer over the initial HTTP post. The HTTP post is carries a body that it is the SDP offer, and in the SDP answer of the web endpoint, you have the answer. So once this is done, the ICE is done between the WebRTC producer and the media server. The ICE is and the DTLS session is set up, and then the RTP and RTP flow is carried over as normal. So as we are using ICE, we can use ICE content freshness to detect about disconnection and DTLS teardown from either side. So next slide, please. We have added an option to do ice trickle ice and ice restart. We still are allowing the media server to use ice light, but as we talked from the very beginning, the web client must implement full ice. So now what we are supporting in this new draft is that you can use an HTTP pass request and from the server, from the client to the URL of the web resource, with the either to communicate new ICE candidates gathered by the client, or do an ICE restart. The SDP, the body of this HTTP patch request will be an SDP fragment with the MIME time, the application trickle ice SDP flag, that it is, I don't recall exactly the RFC, but it is defined in an RFC, and it is references in the draft. There is one small thing with this MIME time, is that it does not allow the candidate or the ICE information to be at session level. It has to be at M-line level. So as we are doing bundle, we just only need to send the candidates for one M-line. I will be applied to both. So it's something that I want to add in the draft, and that's that just sending the ICE candidate for one single M-line is enough, or we can just try to make a modification to the MIME time to also support this the ICE attributes, both the username and password, and also the candidate at a session level, and get rid of this constraint. as we said, the media server may be using a slide, so we have added an option that the media server may reject with this HTTP patch request to the URL of the resource with a 405 not allowed to just reject this tricky lies or rise restarts. And if that's happened, no further requests, the HTTP requests have to be done. But still, if the web client gathers additional candidates after the SDP is sent, it must send a student request so the media server gathers the information from the ICE packets. And that has to be regardless if the HTTP patch is successful or not. So I think that Adam is in the queue.
Yes.
In there, I think, about whether we wanted to make modifications to the SDP frag format to accommodate multiple M lines, or whether we're okay having them like simply apply to everyone because of bundle. I'm happy with the second approach. You know, the less things we have to touch to make this work, I think probably the better.
Yeah, that's what it's in the draft, and just I think that it's a bit more burden in the client just to, but it is really minor, and we don't have to change any other RFC. So I'm also fine with that.
Thanks.
Julius?
Can you hear me? Okay, so I have two comments here. One is that I don't agree. So first, I think this is some very important work. If we don't manage to have something that is accepted by both server authors and client authors, we're going to be stuck with RTMP forever. And that would be really bad. So I'd really like this to succeed, and I'm afraid that it's going to go the way of IPv6, which is our only hope for the internet, and it's been 30 years, and we're still at 40% deployment. So there are two things I'd like to mention on this. One is that I disagree with the fact that the server is allowed to refuse trickle and to refuse a restart. I mean, writing, we all have, everyone who has written a server already has support for ICE trickle and already has support for ICE restart. That is not a problem for server authors. What we want is to make things as easy as possible for the clients. And having to be able to deal with the possibility of a 405 when you attempt trickle is really bad. So I see that what Lorenzo is suggesting in the chat is that it should be able for the client to find out beforehand whether it can do trickle or not. I agree, but I think that's a second best, and that the right thing to do would be to say that any wish server has to be able to deal with restart and with trickle. And my second point is,
I mean, just one comment with that. I don't mind to make it mandatory. It should be not. I mean, because I mean, I don't implement either, or I don't require negotiation candidates in signaling, or I don't support I restarts in my media server, and I'm very happy with that. I have never needed, in fact. And because, as I said, what I really learned the candidates from is from the ICE request and not from the signal side. But anyway, I'm happy to make it mandatory to support it.
Okay. My point being,
the server may just reject it, ignore it completely, and return at 200. Okay, so that should be a non-issue. And if you think that it is, well, if there is a consensus that it must be supported, at least the HTTP request must be accepted by the server. I mean, I'm also fine with that.
I think that Lorenzo is the right authority to ask here, and he's in the chat, so he'll tell you. But I think that the main point is having plenty of clients. That servers usually, there is a limited number of servers, but what we are hoping for is to make it easy to make clients. Those are features that can be ignored by the client. They cannot be ignored by the server. So let's put the difficult bits in the server, and let's make life easy for the clients. The second point is that for us server authors, it would be very helpful if we could have a reference client. So I asked on the mailing list about what is the reference client, and I think it was you, Sergio, I'm not sure, answered that with a few pointers, but without being clear which is the one I should use. So I would like to request from the people who are promoting this document, which I think is very important, that you give us a client that is easy to install with clear instructions about how to install it. I'm quite willing to add support for Wish to my server. I think it's I think it should be easy to do, but I need an easy to compile client to put in the lab.
Well, the first, yes, regarding that, I think that I mean, no one can require anyone to just provide something or code when doing a draft. But anyway, what I'm planning to do is when this draft is more approved, I plan to run an interop hackathon in the next IETF meeting, so we can have interoperability tests between clients and servers. I plan to upgrade Milica so it supports SWIP as soon as we have a more draft, a more ready to deliver draft.
Yeah,
so
sure.
I'm planning
we need to
have,
think about it. We need to think about having a reference client.
It's
not
not
urgent.
a reference.
We don't need it tomorrow.
I don't think if we really need a reference client, but we will do an interop. Or as soon as we have the more stable draft, I plan to run an interop between clients and servers in the next IETF meeting in the hackathon.
Okay, and the third point I'd like to make is that most of the server authors have a web client that works, and that means that the incentive to implement Wish is pretty low. And so I think we should be asking ourselves the question, what is the killer feature? What is the application, which is the killer application that will encourage people to implement Wish in their servers? Now, there is one thing that perhaps is not obvious to everyone, which is that mobile browsers don't implement screen sharing. And my colleagues, let me finish, if that's okay. My colleagues, I use free software systems, but I have found that a lot of my colleagues enjoy using iPads and Android tablets for teaching. And now, the killer application for Wish would be the wide availability of screen sharing applications for mobile systems. And so if anyone in the room is good at writing iPad or Android applications, and I'm definitely not volunteering because that's something that's completely alien to me, but if anyone here is good at writing mobile applications, then one thing that could be the killer application for Wish would be a screen sharing application for iPads and Android tablets. I'm done, if you want to answer, Sergio.
No, I mean, I think that's fine, but it is a bit out of my control.
Yeah, sure. Okay, thank you for listening.
No problem.
Am I next? Yes. So I'm feeling like I'm a little concerned that this specification of the ICE is a little underspecified. In particular, I don't think trickle ICE SDP frag can be used for ICE restarts in the place where it's defined. In particular, there's issues where if the server changes its ports on an ICE restart, then you need to make sure that that you have a clear transactional model of offer answer for the ICE restarts. And also, it's not clear. Are you not? I don't think you're. It's not clear to me. Does the HTTP patch response also contain an ICP frag, or how is the offer answer working here? You didn't say anything about in the document.
Yeah, well, I didn't expect the server to change the ports, and in fact, this is something that I was not supposed to support. But
I mean, I think you might not change the ports, but it still has to change. When you have a new generation with an ICE restart, you still have to change your UFrag and password, don't you? So I think this requires a little more thought for what the server client ICE restart logic looks like. And,
well, in this
maybe also
case,
trickle. Yeah.
well, you are right that if it is required to change the server username and port, we need to send a 200 OK with a new SDP flag with this username and password. So I think
Okay, and also you're saying that the server must not trickle. The server must always have its candidates in the initial. Okay.
Yep.
That seems reasonable, but it should be probably documented.
Yeah. Good point. Yep. I will add it to the next draft.
Okay. Thanks.
Niels?
Yep. Sorry, waiting for my microphone to kick in. Niels, as an individual, on the previous slide, you mentioned ICE consent as a way to detect whether a connection is dead or not. I just wanted to highlight to the working group that the ICE consent by default, according to the specs, only times out after 30 seconds. So I'm not sure if that's for the scenario is good enough or not. I'm mostly highlighting that because the current implementation in Chrome basically does ICE consent a lot faster than these 30 seconds. So lots of people seem to think of ICE consent as like a keep alive. I can quickly verify whether a connection is dead. But that's not according to the spec. It's like 30 seconds. And I mean, that's obviously up to the working group to decide whether 30 seconds is fast enough or too slow. That's all.
Yeah, I think that the 30 seconds is okay for detecting disconnections, and at ICE and GTLS level, obviously you will get your mobile, or you will get faster indication that you need to do an ICE restart, for example, before the ICE is timeouts. But I think that it is also good to know that we have specifically for the server to know when the client has gone. So I think that it is more about freeing resources in the server side once the client, for example, disconnect or turns off because it runs out of battery, to know that we can detect that with a 30-second. That I think is fairly I mean, currently I'm running WebSocket disconnections at detecting disconnection in WebSocket layers at 30 seconds also. So it's more or less what I'm using. Adam?
To respond quickly to what Julius was saying about motivation for servers implementing this. And while I agree that having screen sharing on mobile devices would be really awesome, there is a pretty strong motivation, I think, at least, speaking as someone who operates that kind of thing, to be able to make use of the rich set of capabilities that existing broadcast tools implement. So I don't think there's really going to be a lack of pressure on that end of things.
Yeah. Tim?
Yeah, I'm disinclined to do a lot of stuff on the ICE front, because I think that, and overcomplicate things now, because I think we'll end up adopting nicer in a not too distant future.
I would agree to that. I would agree with that. Yeah. The only thing is, should we? I mean, can we? What should we do? Because I think that we cannot. Should we go to and use nicer now and adapt the trickleize and restart to nicer, or should we wait a bit more until we have a more mature draft of nicer?
I'm really just saying that we hit a level of complexity in ICE that makes it more difficult to implement this now and get it delivered now, then the thing to do is to stop at the minimum level we can get away with. And then a lot of these things that we're trying to talk about will get fixed with nicer in, you know, a subsequent revision or something.
Yeah, I agree. The only thing is that, well, I think that we can revisit before publishing, and I mean, I don't think that we can take the decision right now to go to nicer and remove ice together. I mean, I think that nicer should be the way to go, but probably it's too early. But I agree that probably in the final version of WIP should have nicer instead of trickleize and nice restart if it is ready.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to gate WIP on nicer, because I feel like that might end up taking longer than we expect. I also would expect that from a signaling point of view, what nicer needs is probably not going to be that different than standard ICE. I mean, the underlying mechanism is going to be the same, but I think that what you specify at this level is probably not going to be that different. I think the other point I would make is that I think the way to make this simple is try to make this signaling bind in a simple, obvious way to the equivalent WebRTC APIs, so that it's pretty clear that when you get this JavaScript callback, send this message. When you get this message, call this JavaScript function. Done. And then all complexity is in the WebRTC stack, which you're obviously which almost everybody's going to be using here anyway.
Harald, by reference.
Speaking as Harald Augustjan, speaking as the guy whose name is on the nicer draft. Yes, nicer is nice, but it's not ready to be depended on. It's likely to change based on input from other participants, and depending on its current form is bad luck. So please don't depend on nicer.
Okay.
Support trickleize and nice restart. Trickleize will be part of nicer anyway, and nice restart. Well, sometimes a guy got to do what it's got to do, and sometimes ice restart is the thing that the guy's got to do.
Okay, I think that's fair. So this, as said previously, we are now adding an option to explicitly terminate the session by the client, just sending an HTTP delayed to the resource URL, and when the HTTP delayed is requested from the received by the server, it will also terminate the ICE and DTLS session. And also, as Adam pointed out, a media server terminating the session must follow the procedures in RFC 7675 to also revoke the consent. So, next slide, please. This is one. This was specified in the charter that we have to provide a way to enable extensions for future, or a way to extend the protocol for next version. And there was some discussion about how to do this, and I think that the most HTTP way, or the most HTTP method to use is to send to like create a new URL for this each of these extensions that it will be handle the commands between the clients and servers, and the way to and how to the server can signal back the client which extension does it support is just to create and to return a link header with the URL of the extension, and also adding a rel attribute that allows that start with IETF params whip server side whip and then the name of the extension. This is, for example, how webpush is doing the to signal the client that what is the URL to do all the commands of webpush. So also we ensure that all the extension has to be registered in IANA. And for example, this would be an example of how to back channel bit from the server side, or for sending event from the server to the client could be implemented by using a server-side event that I prefer to HTTP pooling, because it is supported by natively supported by browsers, and you don't have to specify what is the wire format. So it would be just to you send a link to a URL to connect the server-side event object from the browser, and you will start receiving the event sent by the server in this case. And obviously, all the protocol extension must be optional. So in case the web client does not must ignore the link attribute with any rel attribute that it does not understand. So wait, this. So next slide, please. A web push, Harald. I think it's how web push is sending back the link from the for doing all the push commands. I don't know how web push works, but I read the spec and I was using this. Also, there was some questions about if we should also specify how to configure the turn and stun configuration for the clients. I think that it is something that it is interesting, and we should at least draft or explain how this could be used. I'm not sure if making this normative or just making it optional. We have two methods of doing that. First is just configuring manually the URL of the two servers and the credentials, or this is I would prefer to reuse the Justin's draft for HTTP base configuration, because I think it fits quite well. You will just need to, if you are a service provider, you will just need to provide two different URLs, one for receiving the turn server configuration and another one for WIP. And this will allow you to configure to configure turn server based on certain credentials that will not, so you don't need to give them a long-term credential to the user, nothing like that. So I think that this fits quite nicely with what it's with WIP, and I think that is the one that we should be using. Another thing is that I think that it is better to just use two different authentication information for the web for the WIP URL and for the turn server configuration URL, because you may, for example, use a different turn server provider than the one you are pushing your string to. For example, you may use Twilio for turn server because it is widely used, and then just push to whatever streaming server you want to use. So I think that this we should keep the authentication separated. So, Julius?
So the user interface I would like is that I give my users a wish URL and everything just works in the client. Am I right in understanding that you have different URLs for the ICE configuration and the WIP endpoint?
Yeah, because
So I need to give my users two URLs?
if you want to use turn, or probably yes, because if once
Okay,
you are
what
doing,
about the
yeah,
situ-
the problem is that once you are doing the STD post, you already need to send the STD offer, and to send the STD offer, you already need to know the URL. So we need a way, or we need to configure the URL of the turn servers and the credential before doing the initial STD post. So we need to. So
You
that's
see the
the main
problem.
issue.
You see the problem. So what would you consider a way of having, you have the initial message and having the answer be just as it is now, but together with an extra message that says, by the way, if you don't already have a turn server, here's one for you.
But it will
Do you think it
be.
would be possible to piggyback the ICE configuration on the existing protocol?
I don't think so, mainly because when you do the initial STD post, you already need to use need the turn server
Why?
configuration, because you need to create the peer connection. You pass at least in WebRTC, you pass the turn server configuration to the WebRTC to the peer connector
Okay. Point
constructor.
taken. You're right. You're right.
So-
You're right. What about having a way to? So suppose that a piece of software only knows the WIP endpoint. Can it discover the ICE configuration automatically with no extra configuration? I think that's what we should be aiming for. Okay, if there is a few extra network round trips, it's not a big deal. But asking the users to configure multiple URLs is not something that's gonna fly.
I have not been able to think in a way that fits nicely into the protocol. So that's the best
So why
I
don't you
have been able
just
to
add .ice to the URL? You just take the same URL, you put .ice at the end, and it returns you the ICE configuration as a JSON object.
Adam wants to. I think that Adam wants to explain that to take the floor.
This is actually kind of similar to that, except for it like does okay with BCP 190, which is basically we could have the REST API for access to turn credentials be advertised on a .well known endpoint, right? So you could have something that points there to where to retrieve these credentials from, and I think that would probably get Julius all the way to what he wants, where you put one URL in there, and then there, if you don't have turn servers and need them, you have a couple of round trips before you start the session, but it gets you all the way.
I like that. I like that.
That's actually not what I was in queue to say. So if Julius is done,
Okay. I'm sorry, but I'd like to answer a question by Cullen here. So Cullen is living in a beautiful world in which he doesn't need turn servers. I envy Cullen a lot. Now, what happens usually is that you need to put a turn server that is running. So WebRTC has this unpleasant feature when it will choose UDP ports randomly, and they will be cut off by firewalls designed by fascist pigs with read-only minds. And so what you have to do is to put a turn server on the port that you know is unblocked for your user population. So I've been using 1194 because that's OpenVPN, and the OpenVPN tends to be open. So you cannot count, even if your server is not being firewalled, on not needing a turn server.
Yeah, I think that's
okay, I'm just checking the chat quickly.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that automatic turn configuration is something that we really need for Wish to be successful.
Yeah, I think that the Adam's suggestion about putting it in a well-known URI, this would make a lot of sense.
Okay, cool.
Now, the thing that I was in queue to say is I am kind of hesitant to put this in at, you have like recommended on the slide here. I'm hesitant to put it in at any normative level because I don't really want us to block on progression of the document you're citing here. I mean, it's from 2013, right? It hasn't been touched for more than a little bit of time. And I mean, I see that Justin's in the chat. Maybe he can speak to whether he has plans to push this forward. But it's like we couldn't do it in the charter of this working group, which means we'd have to have someone else take it on. And so I think maybe mentioning it as a potential mechanism in Wish would be a good thing, but putting it in any normative level gives me a little bit of heartburn.
Okay. Yeah, well, anyway, I think that the specification itself is very simple. I think it's, I mean, already it is just returning a JSON object that it is the same that you pass to the RTP peer connection. So I think that should not be very difficult to get into a more formal state. Well, Justin is in the queue, so probably well, Justin, just by reference, Jonathan, please wait a bit more.
So, and the one more thing now that you're talking about that occurs to me is if you're right, it's a relatively small document. If we were to pull the contents of this into Wish, then I have no concerns about it at that point.
Yeah, I mean, that's the other option. Either just progress the draft. I wanted to put the reference because I think that the work was meaningful at the time. And if there is no interest in continuing with working with it, we just can do the same, but just copying the mechanism here in WIP.
Yeah. All right. I think we're on the same page. Thanks.
Yep. Jonathan?
Yeah, so I mean, my proposal is, I mean, it's similar, but rather than having not well known, have like some, I guess you'd almost call it a pre-flight URL where you just where the exchange is, you query the URL, it gives you a list of, you know, the URL that you use for the SDP offer answer and the URL you use to get the turn configuration, and maybe URL for any other, you know, information we might decide to extend this with in the future. And then that just gives you that sort of the almost, you know, like this is all the information you need to do this, and then you can query the other ones, you know, as you like based on their properties, and whether that's a list of link headers or JSON, I don't care. But I feel like that might be, rather than not well known, that might be somewhat cleaner authentication wise, but I don't know.
Maybe a pre-flight request without a content type to just get the link of the extensions and like that. Maybe is as good. I don't know what's best from the HTTP way of working.
You know, like the HTTP world, it's the most idiomatic thing that work with tools, but I feel like something like that should be pretty straightforward.
Yeah, both. I think that both would both ways would work. We can continue the discussion in the mailing list, I think. Justin?
Point out that that document, the behave rest thing, got subsumed by what became RFC 7635, which is basically an OAuth mechanism for, you know, connecting to turn servers. So you know, there's a little more machinery there, but the principles are really the same. And I think that's the kind of thing you would probably, you know, would be easiest to land on.
Mm-hmm. The only thing is that not sure, well, I have to check what's the support of that OAuth mechanism, because, for example, I'm not sure if Coturn's really support it, so I was more prone to just return something that can be ready to be used by WebRTC, the peer connection. So that's why I used that instead of the OAuth authentication for Tune servers, that I don't really know if it is implemented or even in Coturn or in popular Tune servers or even in the WebRTC stack.
It might be easiest just to kind of get that progressed, and implemented in WebRTC rather than trying to progress another document, that then and have that as a dependency here.
Mhm.
But yeah,
But
I get the exact status. Like this may be the first time something is really taking full dependency on that technique.
mhm. Yep. Maybe the other approach is there is a problem in the progressing the behave turn rest. Maybe just copy the contents into WIP and specify the the turn server configuration inside WIP. But again, I think that this is something that we can continue discussing the mail list because there is a
Okay.
part of our. Yep. And I think that that's the last topic. It was raised, I don't recall by whom, but for me it was like a an well or something obvious that if we need to support course and that HTTP preferred HTTP options has to be supported to be able to send requests by specifically web browsers. But I don't know if you think that we have to explicitly put it in the draft that how to support it, so anyone is not missing that when implementing a server, or if it is something that we take as it is a common knowledge of a common HTTP knowledge. Adam?
Going ahead and doing this the way that things are done on the web right now, in part because it requires the least amount of changes. If we want to reiterate it by basically pointing out, hey, if you're implementing a server and you want it accessible from more than just your origin, then you're going to need to do this thing over here and then point to the specification, of course. But I think doing anything beyond that is going to be, it's going to be outside the intended purpose of the way the protocols are designed. So like if we're passing JSON information back and forth here saying it's text plain, it's just like that's wrong. It's not how it's not how text plain is intended to be used.
Yeah, no,
So
my idea was just referencing that, hey, remember that you need to do course and you want to do course, just use this.
Yes, I think, yes, I agree with you.
Julius?
So perhaps I have a minority perspective here, but I don't think that wish is important for browsers, because in browsers you already have a full WebRTC stack. You can already run the native JavaScript client. It's interesting for native clients, which are not constrained by CORS. Now, the thing that I think is really important here is that if there is something that is required because of web standards, please explain it to us. You remember we had a long discussion on the mailing list in which we completely misunderstood each other. And the reason for that is that I understand nothing about the web. I understand a little bit about networking, but the web is completely alien to me. So if there's anything here that you need to explain to people who are not familiar with the web platform, please do be explicit.
Okay. Adam?
A quick response to the assertion that anything on the web is going to be running on the same origin and basically can use proprietary protocols. I want to point out there are a handful of web-based broadcast tools right now that are run by third parties as a service that to which that doesn't apply. So you can look at things like Melon App and Stage 10 and Video.Ninja, all of which are like professional broadcast tools that are based on web browsers, and course handling is going to be entirely applicable to them. So I think at least pointing out this is going to be an issue for web-based tools is, a good addition to the document.
Yeah, I agree.
The last slide.
Yeah, that's I think that was my last slide.
Okay, great. So one of the things that we need to do is get this working group, or get this draft adopted into the working group. I thought I'd sent a message, but I just noted that I can't see it on the mailing list. So I'm going to resend that message to get the process started. So please indicate your support, or if you don't want to support adoption, tell us why, and I'll get that message to the mailing list ASAP. And I think that's it, unless anyone has anything else that they would like to bring up.
Do we want to do a hum here too, or whatever? Just to get a sense of.
Let's do one of these little poll thingies. How do we do this? I've never done one of this. So give me a second. So, poll. Do you support adoption of thingy? As a working group plugin. All right, here we go. Dink. Obviously, raise your hand. I think it's pretty straightforward. Yeah, I mean, this is the only draft on offer at this point, so. And because we do have another hour and 10 minutes left in the session. All right, there we go. 9-0. Seems like we'll confirm this on the list, obviously, but it seems like this is probably going to happen. So Sergio, don't spin a new an 03 version yet, because the working group adoption call will go for 02. But once we get that done, then just submit, and we'll just submit one under the same name, and then the 01 version, you can make whatever changes you want into the document, right?
Okay, great. Mm-hmm.
Okay, folks. Well, thank you very much. Have a great rest of your afternoon, morning, evening.
See you.